Yes, we are back. It is episode 15 of the Shutdown Inning Podcast, and we are trying to strike these hitters out. We're trying to go for an immaculate inning on this episode. Steven Rissotto here, Tylor Hall as well. Tyler, what's going on?
Hey, everybody. How's it going, Steven?
It's going pretty
But
good, man. Yes,
number
snowing in the Bay
15
Area.
number 15 already, man. Look at us go.
Yes, absolutely. And we like it's the good part of the year right now, right?
Yeah,
It's
we
the
have baseball to talk about. We have some activity. All the teams have reported, we're full rosters have reported now, so it's not even just pitchers and catchers. Everyone's in camp right now. So it's exciting to think about and actually have news to see every day.
Yeah, the best part of spring training for me is like looking at the montages of these guys walking in new uniforms. Like
Yeah.
that's my favorite in photo day. Like looking at different like Trey Turner and Philly, and all these guys that have put on a new uniform. And it's day one, like everybody's still 500, and everybody's optimistic and there's stories
Yeah.
to tell and there's everything's happening right now and it's just a
Yeah,
fun time.
it's kind of like it feels like everyone's excited right now because baseball's back. And then, once we get the first few games under our belts, it's kind of like, okay, let's get spring training over with.
Is
But
spring
it's
training
nice
too
just to have
long?
it back. I feel like nowadays it probably is because, back in the day they needed it long because players had to have like part-time jobs in the off season so they could, make ends meet. Now, I mean that these guys make so much money, like their job is to stay in shape around the year. So I feel like they do get into the games a little quicker now. I feel like back in the day they used to like have like more of a ramp up before they would see game action at least. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure it would make a lot of people in Arizona and Florida pissed off because they make a lot of money, in season in
Yeah.
spring training is like their season. So that's probably a big reason why they don't do it. And it's like a destination for a lot of fans. I've actually never personally been to spring training. It's on my bucket list, but I know a lot of people who go annually and it's a great time.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go one day. We're gonna have to bring the shutdown inning on the road one of these years. But
Absolutely.
no, I think I agree with you. Like I mean, like the pitchers especially, I don't think it takes them long at all. Like they're throwing all winter. A lot of them have access to like, bullpens and such. I think it's more of a hitting thing,
Yeah.
these guys getting at bats in because at the end of the day, like you mentioned, spring training way back when was a chance for guys to go to camp and get in shape. Now,
Yeah.
if you're not in shape when you show up, you're in the headlines and you're one step or probably five steps behind everybody else. Um, and like that's the cliche that we hear quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
Best shape of life. Yes.
Everyone's in the best shape of their life right now.
And it's
You'd
like
love
it's
to see
yeah,
it.
it's true for some people, right? But like it
Yeah.
it it gets used too much.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know a lot of listeners are the several dozen of you are probably sick of hearing us talk about the rules, but I think one thing we need to talk about, Stephen, is today was the first game action in spring training, and we saw the first shot clock violation, pitch clock violation, where a strike was called on Manny Machado because clock ticked to 7 seconds left. You got to be addressing the pitcher ready in the box by 8 seconds. And it was kind of weird to see an umpire just like step out and point at the batter and call a strike. I'm sure you saw the clip. Like, what was your reaction to it?
Yeah, well, Manny Machado was prime suspect number one, and he said after the game that like he's gonna go down in the history books. And like I think I went on record on this very podcast, and people could dig up the clips of me saying like I like the pitch clock. It's a good idea. It's gonna be, it's gonna speed up the game. There should be pace. But I also think I remember saying like I'm not really too sure about like the ball and strike, like how it's being a ball or a strike if you violate the
Mm,
clock. If the pitcher or batter violates the clock, if the pitcher violates it, it's going to be a ball. If the batter violates it, it's a strike. And now we're seeing like, I don't know if you've been on Twitter and you've seen those college game videos of like games ending with
yeah.
a pitch clock violation. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what to make of it. I just don't see that as being a good thing. So that's one thing that I had on the pitch clock. The other thing I had on it was, and I guess I didn't realize how quick this would be. But 15 seconds after like further research of the Steven Risotto, like, you know, I don't know. I don't for whatever reason I wasn't thinking about how quick 15 seconds was, but it's too fast. It's
Yeah,
too
I mean,
fast.
I saw some at bat where people just recorded like single at bats today, and it did seem very quick. I mean, I think the pitchers are so worried about violating it that I mean, these guys are throwing. Like I forget who it was. It might have been, was it Nick
Nick
Martinez
Martinez with San
on
Diego.
the Padres? He was starting his motion with like 6 or 7 seconds left on the clock because I think he was like so worried about the clock ticking down on him. And I get why they're doing it, but I just think it's very fast and it makes it. I saw you tweeted earlier like now you can't really cook dinner during a baseball game because you're gonna miss half the game because there's a pitch much quicker now.
Mm-hmm.
I get why they're doing it, but it does seem very fast. I think they could have increased the time a little bit and gotten the same results more or less without it feeling maybe I'm sure it's just new to all of us, so it just feels very rushed right now. I'm sure it'll become something we're kind of used to. It also is kind of weird too, like watching the clock in the background. Like I'm used to watching the pitcher and the hitter, and now like at least probably just because it's new, like I said, but like my attention's like on the clock until I see the pitcher lift his leg.
It should not, under any circumstances, be in that position. And I hope MLB ballparks do not put it right behind the plate in the shot of the camera. That's bad. It should not be like I heard that
Should
it's
they
going to
put it
be
like up above home plate, like kind of where the press box is at Oracle,
yeah.
you think?
I think there's going to be one there, and I think I also heard that there's going to be one, right where Gabe Kapler sits in the Giants dugout, like literally under him, like on the, where the railing is by the net under that railing under that first spot. That's what I heard. I'm not too sure,
Okay.
but
Will there be one on the other dugout too? I'm assuming that's
yes.
just so when pitchers are in the stretch, they can kind of see it in their
Mhm.
vision.
Yes, or even put it by the on deck batter. But there's fans there, and that might be a little bit of a hard thing to deal with, but it should not be behind the plate because
Yeah.
that's a little much for me. Put it somewhere where it's visible to every player on the field, but don't put it by
Yeah.
a home plate because the viewers at home, like, if it does go off and there's a violation, there's broadcasters and announcers for that, and they could, tell. We don't need to see the clock. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, we'll know because the umpire will step out like he did
Yeah.
today on Machado. I
Yeah,
know
and
we don't
that
want to spend
takes
too much
time.
time on it, but yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I
Yeah.
mean, I just think they could have, find these guys or something. They get like one or two a week or something, and then if you don't, then you start getting fined or something.
Yeah.
I just, there's going to be some game sometime like that college game you were talking about because I saw that clip as well, and there's going to be a big spot where someone doesn't, doesn't address the pitcher in time, and it's called a strike to end the game or a walk to
Mhm.
walk in or a big run. It's gonna happen, and it
Yep.
really sucks that it's gonna be on like a technicality and not a player actually earning it, whether that's a strikeout or a walk.
Yep. And just to real quick to your point about how quick it is, and I agree, like only a handful of guys averaged 15 seconds last year with no runners on. Only a
Yeah,
handful. It
yeah,
was like, 19, 20 guys. That's not a lot. And like a lot of them haven't even pitched a significant amount of innings to like be regulars in the big leagues. So
yeah.
we'll have to keep an eye on that. This is not really rules related, and we didn't plan for this. So if I'm catching you off guard with this, then sorry. Did you see the thing about the pitchers calling their own game?
No.
So there's going to be a thing. There's PitchCom is now going to be in the hands of the pitcher if they want it. So I,
Huh.
I heard Alex Cobb is going to like try this. He's all down for it. So you have something on your belt, and it's basically PitchCom, and you could click it like once you get the ball back as you're walking back to the mound. You could pitch, you could like click fastball, and the catcher apparently will have an earpiece. So pitchers are going to get a chance to call their own game if they want to.
So they're gonna be sitting there playing with their belt. Like I just feel like that looks weird on the mound too. Someone's gonna end up getting a balk called on them because they decide they need to switch up their pitch and pull their hand out of their glove and reach for their belt.
Yeah, well, the way that I saw it was that Alex Cobb was throwing his bullpen in Scottsdale, and he would get the ball, and like as he's kind of like walking back to the mound, he'd click a button. So that's weird because like that tells me that you need to make your mind, and it's a bullpen, like he's probably working on something, or he's probably throwing, a few of the same pitches in a row. But in a game situation, when you really need to hurry up a little bit and everything's happening so quick, when you throw a pitch, I can't imagine the first thing you're thinking is slider, like, because it happens so quick, right? Like,
I
I
mean, they
mean,
probably have like a game plan in their mind, and
yeah.
they know, okay, if I deliver on this next pitch, I'm setting up my next pitch. You
Hmm.
most of the time, I was a catcher, you were a pitcher, you usually have a couple steps, ahead in mind when you're making
Yeah.
a call. So
I guess that would be a good thing for like a catcher too. They wouldn't have to work. And pitchers, a lot of them call their own games anyways. Like they shake
yeah,
to get to certain pitches. I mean, I don't know how big of a change it will be, but for young catchers, this will help them. And I think some of the younger guys won't even use it. Some of the
yeah.
younger guys still like the
Okay.
idea of having a guy back there being a suggestion box.
Have you ever been there, like as part of the media, when they've like, have they ever like displayed pitch com to you guys? Like, because I'm assuming you don't want to just say fastball. You have to indicate what kind of like location you're going for too, right?
I've never actually seen it, but I have seen the demos. I've seen videos of demos, and I do believe it says something of the effect of like fastball away. But I think the way normally, like if you call a pitch, a lot of it, a lot of times it's obvious where that pitch is going to be. So, like for
Mm-hmm.
example, like I mean, if you call like an Alex Wood slider, like a lot of the times, like say with two strikes, it's going to be down and in. Or if you call a
Yeah,
curveball, but it also depends where the catcher sets up. So like if the pitcher gets a sign and it says fastball, it's like, okay, now I know what pitch I'm throwing, but where am I throwing it? And you look at the plate and the catcher's setting up high, right? So like
yeah.
maybe that goes into it. But yeah, no, it's something I saw over the week. And
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting.
but yeah, no, we'll have to see. And one of the other stories that came out of spring training so far, very early in camp, where like, at the time of this recording, only one day of games has happened, and it wasn't even a full schedule. But Jacob deGrom, the prized possession of the Texas Rangers, who had some question marks signing this contract, now has even more question marks. He was, I guess, sidelined with an injury. What did you see
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, and he signed, people when he signed were saying like, I can't believe DeGrom got 5 years. He got 5 years, $185 million from the Rangers. He's 34. He turns 35 mid-season. And like it wasn't even just like it wasn't game action today. It was like the first day of pitchers and catchers reporting, and they announced that he was injured and they were kind of slowing down his, they were saying it's precautionary, of course, but as a Texas Rangers fan or in the front office, you have to be a little concerned when a guy you just shelled out. I think that equals out to like about 37 million a year, 37 million a year. And first day of camp, he's got something going on.
A side issue. They called it like left side injury or left side tightness.
I mean, I
So
guess, the good news there is it's not arm related, but yeah, I guess everyone's in the best shape of their life except for Jacob DeGrom to start
yeah,
camp.
I guess best case scenario, it's like, okay, maybe this guy hasn't done anything like a few days leading up to camp, and like it's his first time like doing something new, and he like tweaks something. But worst case scenario is that he's had this all off season and he knew about it, and this is lingering back to his days with the Mets. That would not be something good. But I mean, I'm of the belief that like, and I'm sure you're gonna agree with this, is that like a good Jacob deGrom, a healthy Jacob deGrom is just good for baseball. So
Oh,
um,
definitely.
wishing him the best. But yeah, no, I mean the injuries this time of year, I mean they could sneak up, especially for the guys that have only been really hitting in the cage, and once you get on the field and you start doing a lot more a day, and your whole morning is filled up with workouts, I'd imagine it could sneak up on you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
um
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was just something I feel like, it's, he's one of the probably top 3 or 4 free agents this offseason and gets that big deal. So yeah. And then obviously, to kind of pivot to another pitcher who got a large deal this offseason and kind of replaced deGrom in New York, although for a different club, was Carlos Rodon. And especially here in Northern California in the Bay Area, he ruffled some feathers because someone had asked him. I think they asked, basically to almost to compare the fan bases, from where he came from on the West Coast to New York. And his quote was, "The fans here want to win. They care. They care a lot. Giants fans are invested, but not like in New York. Win or lose, you're not going to get booed in San Francisco." That upset a lot of Giants fans. They interpreted it as he's saying Giants fans aren't as invested as Yankees fans, and saying that like being a good fan is equated to booing your own players. So I guess there's kind of two things here. What were your thoughts on the quote? And then we can get into kind of just booing in general after.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's too big of a deal. The guy just signed with a new team. He's trying to win over a fan base that ideally and historically is skeptical when, guys are signed to big deals and don't perform, right? Like if a guy signed to a monster deal to become a New York Yankee and they don't live up to expectations, they get booed.
They hear about it. Yeah.
They hear about it. So there's pressure for Carlos Rodon.
Even if you are performing, they booed Aaron Judge last year.
Yeah. There's just there's immense pressure to perform. And what I think he's doing is he's trying to get ahead of it. And he's trying to, foreshadow it a little bit. And it's like this quote is a prerequisite for when he does get booed, if he does get booed, right? It's like, okay,
he's going to have a rough start in New York at some point.
It's like, see, I told you guys that I would like this, and look at me, I like it. This is the nature of this. And then, of course, we know under the skin, nobody likes to get booed by their home crowd. But the interesting thing about it is, in my mind, is that, and you said this, you've referred to this just now, is that where he got hurt, I think, is the word invested. You can't, and the Yankees are a national brand. They're not just a national brand. They're probably even a global brand on the sports landscape. And I don't believe they're comparable to any other brand in baseball. I don't.
Well, if you read it, he never says that it's better. He says Giants fans are invested, but not like in New York. It's maybe, but not like in New York is saying that they're just different. They're invested, but not in a similar way.
Then he should have used different.
Well, right? He probably wasn't, expecting that question. I'm sure he thought he'd get it eventually, but it's not like he knew that question was coming at that moment. He definitely could have worded it a little better, but I think that's how I kind of interpret it. Because when he was in San Francisco, he was highly, he a lot of praise for the organization, a lot of praise for the fans. Even after he left, I think he had said that, San Francisco Giants fans are awesome. So I think that's why, especially with that kind of background, when he said, but not like in New York, I didn't really interpret that as better. It's just, it's different. And he's saying like, you're not going to get booed in San Francisco. Like it's different in New York. So that's how I kind of took it. Cause I just thought and like you said, he's trying to endear himself to a new fan base. That's not uncommon for teams to comment on their new fan base. I came here because the fans are awesome. And like, when you're on any team, unless you're like going for like straight out villain status, you're going to say that the fans of your team are great and that they're the best in the world. Like every organization has the best fans in the world if you ask their players,
Yeah,
so
exactly. I do agree with that point. But I do think that the word investment, like it means something to different people. But at the end of the day, I do agree that, every player is trying to, argue that their fan base is the best in the world. And, like I was saying, the Yankees, again, national brand, the Giants, they're on the West Coast. I think that there is some of that East Coast, West Coast bias. And Carlos Rodon has never played on the East Coast before. So, it's kind of more of an assumption because he's never played in front of his home crowd in New York, in the Bronx. But there are a lot of Giants fans invested. There are a lot of baseball fans invested in cities that might not be, and again, no team is comparable, no fan base is comparable to the Yankees. The Yankees have fans that are rowdy, they have fans that are passionate, they have fans that are just straight up casual and that only wear Yankee hats because Yankee hats are like the cool thing, right? Maybe that was like more of like
Yeah.
2006. I feel like I don't know if a lot of people
I
do
mean, there's
that.
still like people, every team has them, but like there's
Yeah.
people that definitely are, if you walk through New York, like they're wearing a Yankees hat, but they can't tell you anything about the team. It's just it's a Yankees hat.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
And at the end of the
But
day, I think the Yankees invested is different from the Giants invested. And it's not just these two teams. I think every team has their own level of like being invested, right? Like
yeah.
Marlins fans, their level of being invested is so much different than like the Red Sox level of being invested. So I think it's
Mhm.
such a complex like issue, but I mean,
Well, and
he's
like I
yeah.
said, that's why I think when he said, but not like in New York, I think, it's just different. Giants fans are obviously
Mhm.
passionate. I mean, and they pay a lot of money to go to see a mediocre team a lot. And obviously attendance is down a little bit, but it's not like they're not drawing decent crowds still.
Mhm.
And the team, in the late 2010s and parts of last season, they were not a fun product to watch every night. They support their team. It's just different, which kind of obviously you and I are both passionate baseball fans, and we grew up Giants fans, and I'm a passionate fan. I know a lot of people are, and like Rodon said, like I've never booed a San Francisco Giant in my life.
Yeah.
I've never,
Let's
I
talk
haven't.
booing. Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
it.
like I just don't see why. Like, I'm here to support the team, and I want them to, obviously if they struggle, I want them to do better. But like, what's booing going to do? They're not going to be like, my mindset is like, I'd rather them be like, yeah, I want to make these fans, proud and happy. Like I appreciate the support. I haven't even really booed that many away players. The only one that I remember like really always giving a hard time to was Yasiel Puig, just because he was so fun to hate. And even then, like I call myself like the nice heckler. Like I would yell just like funny things at him just to like joke around with him.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly. No, and I'm glad that you brought up the booing because I was thinking when I read the quote, like I never thought the definition of being like an invested fan base is if your team boos more than the other team. Like that seems like
yeah,
it's like reverse, right? I mean,
yeah,
um, like oh, just because my team boos when players are doing bad means that my fan base is superior. Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And to kind of play and no Giants fans don't boo, regularly for players that are underperforming or did something subpar or whatnot. Um, it's happened a few times. Like Barry
yeah.
Zito, he was booed heavily in San Francisco. I just finished Barry Zito's book, and he talked about how he was given the middle finger at the parade in 2010, and he was booed at the 2010 championship parade. And like I'm not gonna say that Barry Zito is lying about that. Like obviously he remembered it happened to him. But it happens occasionally. Like Brandon Belt was booed for laying down a bunt with two strikes. I was there. It was surprising. It was the first time I've ever seen it, and I was like,
Yeah.
wow. But I don't think that it should be compared just because one fan base boos over the other one.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, that's why I focus on the, not like it's different.
Yeah,
That's the part that I kind of focus on. Both fan bases care about their team just in a
yeah.
different way. But I mean, how are you? Did you, when you weren't in the press box, have you ever
Mhm.
booed, not just a Giant, but like, have you booed an opposing player?
Never. I no. Like I never boo. I would always think the booing was funny. Like, now
Mm-hmm.
batting. Like I remember when I was first becoming a baseball fan, the guy that got booed the most at Oracle Park was Matt Kemp. Matt Kemp,
Oh yeah.
he was the one guy I remember just like because he was so good at the time. And I think that there's a level of respect,
Really
for
good Dodger. Like,
yeah, there's a level of respect for guys that get booed. And like
yeah.
Puig, I thought that was more of like a I don't think there's any respect behind that one. But a lot of the great players get booed in visiting and Machado of recent years, he's been booed at Oracle
Mm-hmm.
Park. Um, and Tommy Pham, he would get booed for
For Fantasy Gate.
for the Fantasy Gate and slapping Jock Peterson and whatnot. But I can never get myself to do it. And
Yeah,
now
I mean,
like,
like I'll jokingly like let out a boo when they're like Ronell's
mhm,
like the lineup for your like Los Angeles Dodgers. I'll just be like
yeah.
boo, but I'm
And
not
sometimes
like
that's the only time you hear boos is when she says the visiting and then says the team and it's
yeah.
booing, you know? That's
And it's
sometimes the
like a
only
large.
time.
It's like not even like a hearty boo from the crowd. It's like literally like everyone just does like that volume that like
Yeah.
boo
In the
like
last few years, it's
so
been nothing. Like sometimes there's no reaction at all for the visiting team at Oracle Park. But
yeah
that's sometimes, yeah. But like now as I'm like getting older, and of course, like I can't make any reaction, cheer or boo in the press box. But if I'm like attending a game, like now I understand that like baseball's hard. Like these guys
yeah
have, you never know what a guy's going through. You know, you never know what kind of mechanical struggles, what kind of mental struggles, what's going on in their family life. And on top of that, they have to go out there the next day and play, and then the next day and play, and then hop on a plane and travel, you know, thousands of miles and then play, and then play. And then 6 months later, it's over. Sometimes
yeah
7 months. I mean, it's a grind and baseball's hard. And like, yes, they're making a lot of money, but I think at the end of the day, it's just such a tough game to, you know, and yeah,
yeah
it's
yeah. I
tough.
mean that's the thing too that I don't get when people are like they make a lot of money. It's like I don't care. Like I'm there to enjoy myself, and also like just because we enjoy watching someone else do their job, like no one makes you go to the game. You go there because you enjoy it. Like
Yeah.
I don't have someone here in my home office. Like I don't have someone standing behind me, and when I like do something, make a mistake, I'm not getting booed at my job.
Great point.
So like because that's the other thing too. Like, oh, well, I pay a lot of money to go watch them play. Yeah, you make that choice. So like, doesn't mean and like the fans that get like and especially it'll probably be even worse now that I have a son and I'll be taking him to games soon. Is the people who just get like obscene with stuff. Like, okay, like having a ticket doesn't give you free pass to just be a total asshole just because to fans and the other team
Mhm.
just because you paid for a ticket. Those are the ones that I really don't like. I mean, if you
Yeah.
want to boo, cool, boo them. It's not my cup of tea, but like,
You
so
buy a ticket knowing what you're getting yourself into. Like you buy a ticket to a baseball game and they're like, unless it's, you know, you know what you're signing up for the most part, right? Like if a team's good, you know a
yeah,
team's good. If a team's bad, you know a team's bad, and you know who's on the rosters when you're going to the ballpark, or at least a
yeah,
lot of fans do. Um, I mean, yeah, no, it's and when you mentioned about how like players make so much money, they are the product. Like there's entire businesses built around the players, and like if you think about it, the owners are making, you know, they should be paying them that much money because they're I mean they're the product. If you change all the players out
yeah.
and then put like replacement players, then there's nothing to watch. And I know we're going into a deeper conversation, but
Yeah.
I wanted to
Yeah, I was
make
gonna say this is kind of a rabbit hole because that's the
yeah.
thing that bugs me too when they say like, oh well, players they make too much money. It's like, well, the teams are making that much money. It's not like if the players don't get it, the money doesn't exist. So do you want it to all go to the owners, or do you want it to go to the players that you actually watch and enjoy going to see play? That's always been
Exactly.
it's all like supply and demand, and if eventually ticket prices get so expensive that literally people aren't going, and I think that
Mhm.
would be a thing more in baseball than most other sports because other sports don't have as many games, so it's like an event for people to go. Baseball, it's so easy to go, oh yeah, I'll go next homestand. And so if tickets are so expensive that fans stop going, eventually the market corrects itself.
Mhm.
So these players make the money because the fans are spending it, and the fans are spending it and the teams have it.
Yeah. And speaking of the ballpark experience real quick, um the and I know we've talked some Giants, and I know this is a baseball podcast in general, but um $9 beers now at Oracle Park. I know that must be feeling good
Yeah.
for you.
What are you trying to say, man? No,
I tried to
no,
say that
it'll
you're
be
over
nice
21
to.
and I'm not, okay?
I'll probably save 12 or so bucks a game. I usually have a couple beers. Once I'm there, sometimes I pregame a little bit so I don't have to pay for the
Mhm.
$14 beers. Um, but this is interesting. I don't know if you know, like I've always thought like it's interesting that what the Atlanta Falcons do with their concessions.
What do they do?
It's like all very affordable. Like they would rather sell, four hot dogs instead of just two because they, maybe their percentage of profit isn't as much, but their overall profit, their net, is a lot more because they're selling more concessions. And I'm surprised that more teams haven't kind of gone that route. It's because, they'll make more money. Their fans will be happier. Where's the holdup?
Yeah.
So, when I saw that the beers were rolling back, and I'm sure it won't just be the beers because that would be kind of weird because the, food at a ballpark isn't cheap either. But, I was kind of like, okay, cool. Just in general, it's nice to see them roll it back. I think it's probably for I saw it was like for 14 or 16 ounces. And then, so that's probably like Coors, Bud Light and stuff. But
Yeah.
it's still, we'll see if the nicer beers kind of have a little correction as well. But, it's nice to see, I think they got to do something to, keep people coming to the yard and happy. And maybe that'll lead to some future decreases too, because of the Falcons method I was talking about.
And if it was $15 like before and now it's like what, $9, then I don't really think you're losing a ton of money by doing that. In fact, you're probably even making more money.
Well, yeah, if you sell, a lot more quantity, like I said, your profit, your percentage of profit won't be as much, but because your costs will go up the more you sell, but you're going to make more money in the long run. So, and
2 more months for me.
And that's right. It's going to be a good time with Steven. We'll have to record like the next day so you guys can all hear the pain that he's in.
We didn't shut it down today. We walked everybody.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think it'll be interesting to see for sure how that kind of goes. And I'm not upset that it's beer. I'll take it.
There you go. And I guess to close it out here, there is a list that MLB does yearly. I think, they've done the top 10 at each position yearly, but I think the past few years they've done a top 100 of just everybody, and MLB Network does it, and it's the shredder. And it's a big thing where they rank all the players and such. And like, we're not going to go over everybody, but we were going to go down some of the names that kind of stick out just a little bit. And we noticed a trend. We were looking at this before we recorded. And the trend was a lot of not ranked guys from last year, Tyler.
Yeah, on the list that Steven and I are both looking at, it shows, they're ranked this year, obviously. And then it shows their rank in 2022. And so we were scrolling through and, near the 90s, you're like, okay, like, obviously some people are going to move off the list. Some are going to hop on. But I mean, I'd say more than half of the like bottom 20 are all new, like almost the whole 50s is new. So yeah, a lot of churning here in Major League Baseball, more than I would expect.
Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Does that mean that like players are getting worse, or does that mean players are getting better? I guess we'll never know.
I think it's probably, a little of column A, a little column B, but usually players that are coming onto the list are younger. And so if you have, 40, 45, 40-ish new guys in the top 100, that means you've got some good young talent in the game. So I think that's, promising. And one of the things that I noticed looking at the list, speaking of like that young talent, is one of the names that jumped out to me was Julio Rodriguez, not ranked last year, ranked 16th best in baseball this year. So it's cool to see, those jumps for those young, exciting guys that fans should, be excited about and should see on the top of this list.
Yeah, no, that is definitely a good thing. And looking at how it's kind of broken down, there's 2 teams with the most players on this list. I'm going to ask if you could guess them. Okay, 2 teams that have 8 players on this list.
I think I might have seen it, but I would have, it's not outlandish guesses, but was it the Mets and the Astros?
That's correct. Mets and the Astros both had 8, and then the Blue Jays, Braves, Phillies had 7. And then the teams with 0, the Tigers, A's, Nationals, Reds, Rockies. So
Giants fans don't look. They were almost part of that list. Logan Webb barely made it at 97, and he's the lone Giant. But I mean, I think that's the thing that would be more concerning to me is not the not ranked players coming on, but how that 100 is not spread very evenly across baseball. I'm not saying that's nothing against the Mets or the Astros, but I think, obviously in a perfect world, you'd have, a few, at least a couple players on every team that are in the top 100 that fans can be excited about.
Mhm.
You know, like it sucks for those teams that you mentioned with zero because like, and they're the teams that call, you know, smaller market don't spend a lot of money, and you see kind of what they get, you know, as a result of that, you know. And so how do they ever kind of turn things around? I don't want to say like stop being poor because every team is worth at least $1 billion. That's also
Yeah.
another pet peeve of mine. But you know, but how are fans going to want to come see your product if you don't have a product to even like spark interest in?
Yeah, no doubt. And like I'm looking at this list now and it's like it's funny because this is where we realize how deep I think baseball's talent pool is because how much last year did we hear, and this is, a lot of East Coast bias possibly, but how much did we hear last year about Nestor Cortez, right? Like he was such a
Yeah.
big story, like a finesse lefty, pitching really well, pitching in big games in the postseason, and he's number 91. So I mean, it tells you how deep this list is. He's number 91. Jeremy Pena, the World Series MVP, number 64. Um,
Wow.
and Brian Reynolds. This is another funny one. Brian Reynolds, who was 43 last year, is now 60. And we've been hearing how this offseason the Pirates want like Juan Soto, uh, a Juan
Yeah.
Soto
A
Hall
Juan
for
Soto
him. And he's
package.
the
Yeah.
60th best player in baseball, according to
Well,
MLB.com.
that's why Brian Reynolds is still a Pirate. Because like
Exactly.
you can ask all you want. You know, you can say that that's what you want to get. That doesn't mean you're going to get it or what you're holding is that valuable. So that's why he's still a Pirate.
Yeah, and Julio, Julio's the highest not ranked on the list. Is that right? Or
Yeah,
when you're looking
the
at lists,
highest
yeah,
ranked.
yeah, that's right. When you're looking at lists, do you say, because we've had this discussion recently with someone, do you say when you're looking at lists, do you say lower or higher in
If I say
regards to
you're
like,
ranked higher, then it would be like first. It'd be the lower, you know, the
okay,
lower
because
number because you're higher ranked than, you know, number one is higher ranked than number two.
yeah, so I say a little different. So like, for example, if I'm saying that Nestor Cortez at 91 and I think he should be closer to number one, I usually say he should be lower on the list.
Yeah, you're wrong.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I'll take your opinion for that one.
At least I
Um,
think so. Tell us in the comments below.
yeah.
You know, let us know. Is Steven right or am I right? But
Bryce
yeah, you
Harper
know,
17. My goodness.
isn't he gonna miss all year? Or is he gonna
Uh,
make it back at some point? I mean, I think if he does make it back,
maybe.
it'd be late in the year. So it's surprising that I mean, I guess this is just, you know, future rankings and not just 2023.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what the qualifications are. I know the
So
shredder
like
counts in like the last 2 or 3 years.
yeah, and another thing I noticed, you know, speaking of teams that have a lot of players and also players that made quite the jump, the Mets 1-2 punch of Verlander and Scherzer are ranked 14th and 15th respectively. So Verlander jumped from 92nd
Woo!
to 14th as a 40-year-old, right? Isn't he 40? Or
Yes,
is
and
he
yeah,
turning 40 this year? So I mean,
this
think
might
of
be
that
40.
jump as a 40-year-old. Like that is nuts to jump almost 80 spots.
And even more impressive coming off Tommy John.
Yeah.
And what that also means is that around this time last year, he did not pitch an inning the previous year and was still top 100. so,
Yeah. Yeah. So that
so
shows just how quick guys can move up or down or off of this list. So, you know, but yeah, I mean, the top 10, there's some guys that like Soto and Turner aren't in the top 10. And I'm like, how is that possible?
yeah,
And then you look at the top 10, you're like, okay, Freeman, Jordan Alvarez, Jose Ramirez, Goldschmidt, Arenado, Machado. That's Trout, Judge, Otani. So yeah, then you're like, okay, like, oh, that makes sense.
yeah.
But, you know, and that's good. That's a good thing for baseball that we're looking and there's guys like ranked 10th to 20th. And we're like, how are they not top 10? And then you see the top 10, you're like, okay, like, so it's
Mhm.
good to have that many great players that you could envision being, you know, and obviously these lists are subjective. Like I mentioned to Steven before we recorded, like it's nice to have right now during spring training. Like if this came out like middle of the year, like I wouldn't really care what an arbitrary ranking system is. Same with like power rankings
Yeah.
during the season. Like I don't really care about those. I'll look at them if I'm bored, but I'm not like, I can't believe that this team is there. Um, but you know, it's good that you could look at this list and like, obviously everyone's list would probably be a little different, but some of the guys that are ranked like in the high teens, if someone put them in their top 10, like Vladimir Guerrero ranked 18th. If someone put him in their top 10, you wouldn't think that
Julio.
that was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, Julio Rodriguez. I mean, so there's names, lower on this list that you would think might be higher, and you wouldn't be wrong in thinking that. So that's awesome to have like so much young, great talent in the game.
Yeah. And for those wondering who, what the top 10 is, number 10 is Freddie Freeman. He was previously 9, so he kind of stays in the same place. Yordan Alvarez of the Astros is number 9. He was 48. Number 8 is Jose Ramirez from the Guardians. He was previously 15. Paul Goldschmidt, the reigning, National League MVP. He is number 7. He was 27 before, so a big jump from him. Nolan Arenado's number 6 from the Cardinals. He was previously 19. Manny Machado is number 5. He was previously 18. Mookie Betts is 4 from the Dodgers. He's previously 6, so he gets maybe better. Mike Trout, who battled through some injury but had a nice year last year. He is number 3, previously number 2. Aaron Judge jumps from number 11 to number 2. And the number 1 best player in baseball, according to MLB Network,
Surprise.
for the second straight year is the pending free agent himself, Shohei Ohtani. So,
yeah, I mean, a couple of things that jumped out to me in that top 10, 2 Angels, 2 Dodgers, 2 Cardinals, so a lot of the top talent kind of, in one, on similar, few teams.
And no rings together.
Yeah.
Like Freeman wasn't there in 2020. So,
yeah. And so, the other thing, that I noticed was, next year's free agent class isn't very good. We've talked about it before. I've talked about it. But, the top 2 are 2 of the top 5 players in baseball. Machado, assuming he's going to opt out, he's said basically, unless he's hurt, he's opting out. He's made that not a secret. And Ohtani obviously hitting the market. So, the top of the top is going to be nice this offseason, but the rest might be, it drops off quick, but 2 big gems coming off. And then the other thing, just, how much strong, he had a great season, a regular season too, but how much a strong postseason can do for you. Cause Yordan Alvarez jumping from 46th all the way to 9th. And a lot of that is, a lot of, fans who kind of follow the game pretty regularly knew about him, maybe not even how good he was. And like your casual fans didn't know about him. And after watching baseball last October, if you're most casual fans probably know who Yordan Alvarez is now.
Yeah, no doubt. He's one of the most balanced hitters one of them that I've ever seen. Balanced and like harmful at the plate.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that top 5 is like, you could mix and match and like there probably would not be any issue.
I think, yeah, except for Ohtani. I think if anyone who says Ohtani is not number 1, but like, 2 through 5,
Yeah. I think you could easily manipulate like Mookie Betts. You could even move, Arenado. Freeman could even go past Goldschmidt in the top 10. I mean, there's so many possibilities with these, and I like lists. They're fun. One thing real quick that I wanted to pick your brain. This is another unscripted thing that we didn't talk about before, but regarding the Machado thing, is this the right time for that? Like, because it did end up being a headline. And like talking about the contract in spring training, saying, yeah, I'm going to opt out. Like, look at all the money out there. He basically said, I'm not quoting him, but that's like a spot on paraphrase in my mind. But from what I heard, but is it like the right time for that? Cause like, I feel like he created maybe a distraction that.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of the reason, like he said that, I think it was the day that like he was only going to negotiate till the day that he reported, and then after that he wanted to focus on baseball. So I think he did it I think at first he was hoping that the Padres would come in hearing that and give him an offer that he couldn't refuse, and so a lot of reports say they pretty much lowballed him and so I think maybe he was just trying to maybe leverage that. I mean, what's not to like for him to be playing in San Diego right now? You live in San Diego, your team's awesome, you're one of the best players in one of the best lineups, in the heart of the lineup. But also I think, there were a lot of guys who have signed extensions already, or who, just had a couple of years bought out arbitration. And he saw that, what I was talking about a minute ago, the free agent class isn't great. And so if you're one of the top players in baseball and you're, the belle of the ball, as Michael Scott would say, you're going to get money because you're going to have, every team who needs a big free agent is going to be pinging these two guys. And so, I think he at least did a good thing because, he seems to have evolved a lot from being kind of a young guy that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way in Baltimore to, a lot of people say he's a great leader now. And so, I think part of that is, he said, once I get to spring training, like I'm not negotiating anymore because I want the focus to be on me, on me playing baseball and how I can help the team win. So, if he was still trying to negotiate it right now and, he's probably eventually people are going to ask him enough questions that it's not really going to be news anymore. So it's not like he's going to get asked it, all the time.
And I don't want to make it seem that like I'm hating Manny Machado because I'm a big Manny Machado fan. I'm a big fan of the way that he's led this Padres team since, essentially since he's gotten there. He's dealt with, a really tough year last year, but ended up being really rewarding in the end. He goes out there and posts. He plays every day. He puts up MVP numbers just seemingly every year. He puts his head down. He plays. But something was weird about him coming out and talking because I think
it's all leverage. Because if he just went to the Padres and said, "Hey, I'm going to opt out," like they're like, "Okay, well, we'll see how this season goes." It could have been so easy,
though. It could have been so easy for a reporter to ask that question and then him just say, "I'm focused on the Padres. I'm focused on winning a championship." Right? Like, wouldn't that have been so easy? Yeah, and I'm all for him opting out. Like, go out and get it back. He's deserved it. Like he would pop his original.
The only
deal.
reason he made it public is because he wanted the leverage on the Padres and to have them up their offer.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just like, maybe I'm just a little, I just didn't like the distractions that San Diego had last year with everything that happened, and I think it's gonna it probably already has boiled over since it happened, but and also like, I mean, at the end of the day, the Padres got to get Soto locked up. They got to get
they're not going to lock Soto up. I mean, I believe he's a Boris client, right? Like he's not signing, he's hitting free agency. So I'm not saying he won't sign with the Padres. I mean, the only way, because I think you were kind of saying they got to do this, they got to do that. The Padres, like the only way I see Soto staying with the Padres is if Machado is not on the Padres.
I just don't see
how they have the payroll to pay Tatis, Soto, Bogarts, Machado, Darvish, like eventually, like those
and
guys
they're not a big market either.
Yeah,
I don't know where they're getting this money.
I mean, they're getting popular now because they're all really good, but a few years down the line, these guys are a little bit older. They're not performing as well, and then your attendance goes down, and then you're paying 5 guys, $160 million.
Yeah.
So that's the only way I can see Soto staying. If Machado stays there, whether they still really are negotiating or he hits free agency and they still extend him, like I don't see them having all 4 or 5 or 6, however many guys that was, like all of them. I think like they're not, and Soto's going to hit free agency regardless, just because of who his agent is.
Yeah, no, I agree with that point about Soto and Machado. So yeah, San Diego ended up having 6 on that top 100 list. So we'll have to do more.
Probably just mentioned all of them.
Yeah, you know what? A good idea is we should do more of these. Like we should come in every week with like a list of some sort, like top 5 or top 10, this and that. Our friends at the Say Hey podcast, they do that quite a bit. So shout out to Say Hey podcast.
Say Hey Doug, Say Hey Rob.
They had a list this past episode. So
I'm only partway through it, so I'll get to the list eventually. But that sounds good. We'll hit you guys with a list next week.
Yes.
But yeah, I would say we've shut it
down again. Yeah, we shut it down.
We just went from 100 to 1. We shut it down.
And the pitch clock, we did not get an automatic ball. We beat the pitch clock, and I think this ended up actually being a pretty shorter episode. But watch, when I say that, I'm going to look and it's going to be like 53 minutes again. But anyhow, shut it down again. This was great, Tyler. Appreciate because I know last time you were a little under the weather. I had a week where I was under the weather, and I'm glad that we could make this work. And I can't wait for the rest of spring training and for the season to come on. But yeah,
same here. Glad to be back. Always good talking ball with you, my friend. And thank you all for listening. That's what's up.
Heck yeah. Follow us. Let's go. Follow us. Shutdown Inning. You're gonna have to do another That's What's Up because I forgot the plugs.
Uh,
Shutdown_inning on Twitter. Go check it out. Spotify, podcast, everywhere you find them. Go check it out. And see you next time.
That's what's up.